Hello and welcome to another episode of the Safe Schools Rainbow Roundtable. I'm your host, Dr. Dan Sheridan. This is one of America's most important television programs that explores the LGBTQ+ experience for our students and youth, educators, and families. Our mission is to educate our communities on some of the biggest issues our queer youth face. Today, we delve into a theme that holds immense significance in our educational landscape, LGBTQ+ History Month, celebrated every October. We have an incredible panel with us today, each bringing their unique perspective and expertise on the topic. They'll be sharing insights on why it's crucial for students to learn about LGBTQ+ heroes and the importance of seeing themselves reflected in history. But before we hear from them, let's set the stage. In examining LGBTQ+ history and its impact on today's education, we will have an historical overview that will take us on a journey through time. LGBTQ+ History Month is not just a month, it's a testament to the resilience, struggles, and triumphs of a community that has often been marginalized. Throughout history, there have been key events, landmark decisions, and influential figures that have shaped the narrative of LGBTQ+ rights and representation. Today, we'll journey through some of these pivotal moments to understand the roots of this commemorative month and its relevance in our schools. We will consider real-life experiences. History is not just about dates and events. It's about the people who lived through those times, their stories, their challenges, and their victories. In this segment, we'll hear real-life experiences that highlight the profound impact of LGBTQ+ History Month. From students who found solace in learning about LGBTQ+ heroes, to teachers who've witnessed the transformative power of inclusive education. These stories will shed light on why it's essential to recognize and celebrate this month. As we transition to our discussion on tools and resources available, remember that knowledge is power. With the right tools and resources, we can ensure that every student feels seen and valued. In this segment, we'll explore the myriad of tools, strategies, and educational materials available for educators and students alike. Whether you're a teacher looking to diversify your curriculum, or a student seeking resources to understand your identity better, this segment aims to empower you with actionable knowledge. And lastly, we'll gaze into the horizon with our Future Outlook segment. As we look to the future, it's essential to recognize the strides we've made and the challenges that lie ahead. What does the future hold for LGBTQ+ History Month? How can we, as a collective educational community, ensure that the stories of LGBTQ+ heroes continue to inspire and resonate with future generations? Our panelists will share their insights on these questions and more, providing a roadmap for a more inclusive and understanding future. We thank you for joining us on this enlightening journey today. Before we dive deeper into our discussions, we have an amazing group of panelists to discuss our LGBTQ+ history and its impact on today's education. To help us with the history of LGBTQ+, this is Steve Rothaus. This award-winning journalist for the Miami Herald is a recipient of the NLGJA, the Association of LGBTQ+ Journalists Hall of Fame Award. Welcome, Steve. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks very much. It's kind of interesting to me that when I started covering LGBTQ+ issues back in 1997, I didn't think of it at the time as chronicling our history. I mean, I was just covering stories on a daily basis, but then suddenly people in the community began to say, you're telling our stories and, you're keeping our history. And all these years later, I look at my work and I see going back to 1997, 98, and moments in history of our history. I started because Johnny Versace was murdered in Miami Beach in 1997, and nobody in Miami could cover the LGBTQ community that was so involved in the story. And so that's a moment in history. Mm-hmm. And then within a year, the loss of Matthew Shepard, and writing about what young people here thought about that. And then you take it right through to marriage in 2013, 2014, 2015, and these are all moments in our history that, it's there, it's kept, it's in an archive, you can go to the library and read these stories. But my concern is that, people don't remember, that they don't really know, or they were born afterwards.
Sure. Well, we look forward to hearing what you have to say today. Thank you,
Thanks.
Steve. To help us with the digital and pop culture understanding of LGBTQ plus history, this is Tiffany Williams, a popular digital influencer and host of Tiffany Explains It All. Welcome, Tiffany.
Thank you for having me here. I think it's really interesting to be a kind of like the social media guru, so to say, because a lot of my audience is usually younger generation, teenagers, even some young adults, and occasionally, some adults that are young at heart, And I think the most important thing is to have some representation for the LGBTQ plus students, because there's a lot more of them than people like to point out. So, and their matters are so important, and just being able to be the voice for them is such an amazing experience to be doing.
Absolutely. We'll hear a little bit more about Tiffany Explains It All later.
Oh, okay.
Yes. And to help us with this academic perspective on the intersection of LGBTQ plus history and education, this is Dr. Gisela Vega, the director of the University of Miami LGBTQ plus Student Center, one of America's most important university programs for LGBTQ plus students. Welcome, Dr. Vega.
Thank you, Dan. It's really great to be here. The center is part of the university, and we have actually one of the only LGBTQ minors that you'll find in Florida. I think something that's really interesting is about our queer theory. Queer theory is a camp of research and study,
Yes.
and it's been around for a long time. And folks think our history has just started, but the reality is our history has been around forever. And our very first program, I think, started back in 1971. Mm-hmm. So, there's definitely a long legacy there that we hope isn't forgotten and that people can learn more about.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Vega.
Sure.
And to help us with the student perspective on LGBTQ plus history and how it interacts in classrooms and on student campuses, this is Artemis Cruz, a student in Miami-Dade County Public Schools. Welcome, Artemis.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to talk and learn about professional perspective and everything. Thank you.
Thank you. And we look forward to hearing the student perspective too.
Thank you.
And to help us with the organization efforts going on over LGBTQ plus history and how it affects education, this is Harold Marrero, Chief Operating Officer of Safe Schools. Welcome, Harold.
Thank you for having me. And everybody here is sharing a great perspective. Queer history is something that is often not really spoken about, or when it's spoken about is concentrated just to recent history. And there's so much more that can be explored across not just the West, but across the entire globe. And we're trying to do that at Safe Schools. We've just launched a new program called Queer History 101, where we do these short videos and we just expand on different perspectives on queer history. And we plan to expand that throughout the years. So this is right on topic for us.
Fantastic. Thanks for joining us. So thank you for setting the stage with us. As we delve deeper into our theme, let's journey back in time and explore the historical context that has shaped today's LGBTQ plus landscape. Let's consider the historical overview. Our Tools and Resources segment today delves into the importance of representation and the power dynamics that shape our historical narratives. It's often said that history is written by the victors, but in many cases it's penned by those with the power to decide which stories are worth telling and which are left in the shadows. Books, documentaries, and other resources can help illuminate some of these stories, but there are still vast periods and cultures that remain underrepresented or even completely absent. This isn't to say that we're devoid of resources, but rather that we must be more proactive and discerning in seeking them out. For educators, it's crucial to highlight the exceptions to these erasures. From ancient cave paintings to the rich tapestry of indigenous cultures, queer individuals have always been a part of our shared human experience. By emphasizing these stories, we challenge the myth that the LGBTQ plus community struggles and triumphs are a recent phenomenon. As historian Susan K. Freeman insightfully mentioned, understanding this history empowers marginalized individuals, reminding them that their current challenges are not a result of inherent inferiority, but rather man-made power dynamics. For instance, an educator might introduce their students to a book like Robert Jones Jr.'s The Prophets, which paints a vivid picture of same-sex love among enslaved Black individuals. By understanding the broader context, students can grasp why such stories have been obscured over time. Parents and students can also play a role in this journey of discovery. By visiting platforms like the Safe Schools website, they can access a wealth of content that sheds light on the LGBTQ+ community's rich history. Such resources not only educate, but also inspire, reminding everyone that queer individuals have always been here, shaping the world in myriad ways. However, it's also essential to approach this history with nuance. While umbrella terms like LGBTQIA are useful, they're rooted in contemporary language and might not capture the full spectrum of gender and sexual identities throughout history. It's crucial to respect the identities and descriptors that individuals and cultures have chosen for themselves. So panelists, given the vastness of history and the challenges of representation, how can educators, parents, and students collaborate to ensure a more inclusive and accurate portrayal of LGBTQ+ history?
You know, it was that question that led us to create the Queer History 101 videos and content for Safe Schools, because I always saw that we always focus on Marsha P. Johnson, Harvey Milk, Stonewall riots, and that we cover that, and that is very much covered, and everybody knows it. But I wanted to introduce students to a much broader understanding of LGBTQ+ history, including Silvia Rivera, including Federico Garcia Lorca, which was a Spanish poet who was killed by the Spanish authorities in the 1930s because he was gay, to the Harlem Renaissance. We have a whole video dedicated to the Harlem Renaissance. And that's to me is very important because it does show a much broader understanding of our history. And it brings in moments in our history that aren't spoken about because they tend to be by people of color, by the Hispanic community, by other marginalized communities that don't get as much attention as what happened with, lately with marriage equality and with all the other things that have happened in our history. So that's something that we were intentional about, that we really tried to focus on, and making it available for students and parents so they can teach themselves. And that's a way that we're also trying to help teachers, in that you may not be able to talk about this, but we can. As a nonprofit, we can do it. We have the resources, we have the minds that can get together and put all this together. And we ask our community partners, what do you want to see? What do you want us to do? How can we help you create more content for your community that you might not be able to access, but you can point students in the right direction or point parents in the right direction?
I think one of the things that's really important is, how do we get our information, our content into the hands or into, the teachers, the schools, the parents? Because there's always, I'm going to say this, and some people may disagree, but we've always had content out there. It's just a matter of how do we find it. I'll give one quick example. When Coming Out Day started 2 years after that, the NEA, along with the task force and another group, developed this LGBThistory.com page, which really maintains history of our icons every October. They've been doing that since '96. So, what they do is they highlight an icon for every day. That's available. That's a resource. Students, anybody can go in there and learn about our history. CLAGS, which is the Center for Lesbian and Gay Studies out of CUNY, holds a lot of research and information. I think that's another way. We have for colleges and universities, there's the Pride Index that comes out of Campus Pride. It tells you what schools are receptive, who has programs. Right now, there's about 20 programs, LGBT or queer study programs at different universities across the nation. How do we get this information to people and let them know that it's there and there's resources available? I think that's the hard part, is how do we get it into the hands of people that need it the most?
Yeah, absolutely. And doing research for Q History 101, I found all these things out. I'm like, I had no idea that this existed. And even for doing research for this episode, I was stumbling across all these amazing resources that it's like we're shooting ourselves in the foot by not making this available to everybody. in all of our platforms. And I think that that is a great thing, that maybe we can work together in creating a platform that we have all of these resources available for people to access.
We talk about if we don't share our history and use our resources, it's forgotten. And I'll give you an example. There's a wonderful book I used to use in the classes I would teach for LGBTQ history by Neil Miller called Out of the Past. That book's no longer in circulation. And it has our history from the 1800s to today here in America. So what are we doing to preserve those pieces, those researchers that are doing the work, that are getting the history out there? I think that's an important piece. And we've got to work together to make sure that our stories and our history isn't being erased.
Right. And I think also it's really important, whatever good history has happened, it happened because people took a chance. They were brave. They came out, and they, we look at Florida history, and in the early 60s, late 50s, early 60s, there was something called the Johns Committee. And teachers in Florida were, in the university system, they were forced deep into the closet for fear of either being fired or arrested. And the state legislature...
Many were.
Many were.
Many were.
And there were many people who killed themselves because people had turned in their names in the state university system. And this was not that long ago. And, we look to today, where now we talk about teachers being afraid that they'll lose their teaching certificates. And perhaps some of them might. But you have to kind of weigh to yourself, are you, would you prefer to stay in the closet, to not let your students know, to bury that part of your life, which is what's wanted by the people who've enforced these laws? They want you back in the closet. Are you prepared to live your life that way? Or is it more important to you to live your life as a Dr. Vega, or the other teachers that we knew along the way who were not afraid, who then risked their jobs, risked their careers, simply by being who they were, by having a picture on the desk of the person that they loved? And not even the people who, were the advisors to, GSAs, but the people who just lived their lives, or they put a safe space sticker on the wall in their office. And these people were brave then, and they're going to be brave now. And, choices will be made.
And that really speaks to the founding of Safe Schools. Was that it was educators that were fed up with what was happening and got together in houses doing these little wine meetings, just trying to figure out how can we create a safe space, not just for our students, but for ourselves as well. How can we fight against the discrimination that it was really a leftover from the Anita Bryant campaigns here in Miami-Dade? How can we fight to reverse that? And Safe Schools was birthed out of that need for educators to not just be able to teach and be themselves, but also to protect LGBTQ plus kids, or kids that are perceived to be LGBTQ plus. So it's really creating a safe space for all. And we, as a Safe Schools, as a legacy nonprofit in Miami, we are so grateful to the vision of our founder, Robert Lupo, because he really put himself out there. And he did this after a traumatic event. He was stabbed walking in the Miami Beach at night with his partner. He was stabbed by a gang of kids that just had an issue with them. And him surviving that led him to feel like it's one of those traumatic events that you have post-traumatic growth. He's like, I'm just gonna do this. This is what I need to do for myself and for other educators and for the kids, because I don't want anybody to feel the same way that I felt or go through what I went through.
I know Robert, and he and Etta Cimino and these other teachers, they put their necks on the chopping block. Just as they're being asked to today. And when you talk about not knowing your history, I think many of these younger teachers didn't understand the history either. And, I wish I could say that it would end just the way it is right now. But if you remember that when the Don't Say Gay law began, it was K through 3. And within a year or two, suddenly it was the entire school system. And yes, today they say you can be challenged, you could lose your certificate if you talk about it. But at what point might they say, you lose your certificate just because you are?
Yeah.
And that's the fear.
Yeah.
And it won't matter whether you said it or not, you may still end up losing your job if somehow they decide, like it used to be, that you weren't a fit individual to be a teacher.
Right.
Or now, even for calling a student their preferred name, you could get your license removed.
Yeah.
Oh,
And it's
sure.
so enraging how this happens.
I think another thing, just to go off of what you were talking about, like what I was saying earlier on, I said that I'm talking to GSAs, I'm going to these classrooms. And again, I understand the concern from some of these people, but I also agree, like, well, somebody has to be the one to stand up against this pushback.
Yeah.
Because it's not fair to these kids, because you're pushing them back into the closet, and you're going to start pushing them, the adults, back into the closet, And that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Like, we're out, and we're not going back.
Yeah.
Well, that may be, but until you get to that point, there's going to be a lot of pushback.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there needs to be a plan that if they decide next year, you can't have a GSA anymore in school. What is your plan?
Yeah, and I think that because Safe Schools was filled with educators, we were the first ones to really sound the alarm when Don't Say Gay was even coming out. Because Secretary Scott Galvin was saying that this is not going to be kept to elementary school. This is going to be expanded. There is fine print in that law that said it was going to be expanded. So we got everybody together and we started doing rallies and we started really like protesting this, not because we, the law itself is so vague, and that was the main problem, is the vagueness of the law. So people don't know how, educators have a million things to do to not have to go in there and try to figure out like what this law says, like if they can and not get in trouble. And that is why it is so important for organizations like Safe Schools to come in and not just sound the alarm, but also say like, we have to stand up. This is not okay. This is something that we have to really fight so that teachers are not censored, so that our history is not censored, and so that kids can continue and will continue to see themselves in the pages of the books.
Artemis, can you tell us what it's like in school now? What a history class is like? Have you seen a change since Don't Say Gay?
It's kind of terrifying now because a lot of teachers that used to be like openly supportive now have to like not be as supportive, like not openly supportive. I know now I don't get called my preferred name. I get called by my last name for teachers because, again, you can't call a student something that's not their legal name.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to explain it well, but it's just like a constant feeling of terror and anxiety that every time I go into school, it fills me with that feeling.
Yes. It's terrible. And Dr. Vega, what's it like on the college campus?
Well, I think the University of Miami is a little different than perhaps some of the other institutions. We do have a very strong community that's made up of multiple different student groups. There's a faculty staff group. We have an alumni group that's extremely active. So there's been a lot of support I think students will have found on our campus. But we get students from other places that are asking questions. What's happening in Florida has had an impact, I think, on students coming to the U because we happen to be in Florida and there's that fear given the current legislation and stuff. I've had conversations with parents about, how safe will my child be if I send them to your institution? And I can certainly speak about the U, but again, we're sort of insular to what's happening out in Miami. I can't speak for the rest of the city or the state. So I try to be very frank with them, but I will say it has impacted, I think, students' decisions whether they choose to come to Florida or not.
And teachers, I would think the same thing.
Teachers, the same thing. I think that's also very true. So it's we're doing the best we can to sort of be there and support our students in the best way possible and provide resources. But again, we're one institution, a private institution.
Sure.
I'm sure it may be very different for my colleagues at other public institutions.
Well, I mean, we're seeing that how difficult it is to find qualified teachers right here in Miami-Dade County. And, there was a story in the Miami Herald a few days ago that they've lowered requirements now so that you need a GED to be a substitute teacher in Miami-Dade schools. And why is that? Why is it that they're having such trouble? Now, there are other reasons too. The economy, the cost of housing, how much it costs to rent an apartment. Yeah, all of these things. But now we have another layer. And that is this either a safe place for someone to want to come to be a teacher? And and if it's not that it's a safe place, is it just a place you want to be?
Yeah.
Do you want to put yourself in this situation where, if you are out, that you suddenly have to go back in? I mean, it's just another layer.
Yes. It's a very complicated situation, and I think it speaks to having the right tools. It can make a huge difference in our school communities. And Safe Schools has one of the most dynamic video integration strategies in America to combat what we're watching in Florida. These programs are educational and entertaining for educators, students, and parents. Rainbow Roundtable is just one example. Another example is our weekly program, The Tea with Eddie.
Hey there, fabulous friends. Welcome to The Tea with Eddie. We're here to keep it queer, keep it real, and keep you informed about the latest in politics, pop culture, and everything in between. Every episode will dive deep into the heart of today's hottest topics, cover some of South Florida's hottest queer events, and serve you insights you won't find anywhere else. All from our unapologetically queer perspective. And of course, we'll be joined by some fabulous guests who will share their wisdom, wit, and stories with us. So whether we're discussing hard-hitting political issues, celebrating our favorite pop culture icons, or simply spilling the tea on the latest scandals, you can count on us to give you the lowdown with a side of sass. Now grab your favorite teacup, get comfy, and let's start spilling. Here's what we've got brewing for you today on The Tea with Eddie.
So we don't have Eddie with us here today, but we do have Harold, COO of Safe Schools. So Harold, can you tell us a little bit more about The Tea with Eddie?
Sure. So The Tea with Eddie is all about going deeper into some of the subjects that we want to cover. So as Tiffany was saying, Tiffany explains it as more like that after-school special. It's a feel-good, just finding queer elements in different aspects of popular culture. The Tea with Eddie is more precise. It goes deeper into certain subjects. It talks about broader subjects. One of the ones that I'm really proud of is we did something on our nation's motto, which is our original motto, which is E pluribus unum, which means out of many, one. And we spoke about different aspects of our democracy. What makes us special? Why is diversity so important? So it's you talked about queer theory, and it's finding queerness in spaces that people wouldn't really look at. It's finding the intersectionality that exists in the entirety of who we are. It's finding these moments of people shining and being their true self, and how that has impacted our democracy, has impacted our nation, has impacted the West, has impacted the world. And that is what The Tea with Eddie is all about. It's finding those moments, it's being unapologetically queer. It's just really like going deep into different aspects of our history and our culture as well.
Absolutely. And Tiffany, you spend a lot of time with Eddie. What's he like?
He's just a really fun guy. He's really great at the content creation. And I was kind of surprised when Harold had asked me. He's like, "Hey, do you want to join our team?" And I was like, I saw some bits of Eddie's, and I was like, "You already have everything you need." But sure, if you want some extra flair, I'll join.
That's awesome. Well, check out The Tea with Eddie on Safe Schools' social media pages.